Elevator action descended onto the ZX Spectrum in 1987. How does it stack up to the arcade original? Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about elevator action.
Yeah, man.
Aaron, when was the last time you got some elevator action?
Well, let's see. Never. I've never attempted elevator action. Elevators are kind of filthy, both.
They are.
You know, now, we did have a game I played in college with a couple friends of mine called, remember that song, Love in an Elevator from Aerosmith?
Aerosmith, yeah.
We had a game we played called Hate in an Elevator. And the game was, we would get in the elevator, and then the second the door closed, you just beat the crap out of each other until the door opened. That was the game. And that was it. And it was fun, yeah.
Was the Chud involved in that?
No, the Chud was not in on this one because this was at a college, and Chad had long since left college. So there you go. What about you? Have you ever, Aerosmithed it up?
Never Aerosmithed it up. I've always had a slight fear of elevators, to tell you the truth. Closed, confined spaces don't really do it for me. So if I was going to be getting some action, it would be as far away from an elevator as possible.
Have you ever ridden on those elevators that, like, you ride them, and at on the floor you're getting off, it stops before the floor and then drops precipitously at the last second? What's up with that? You know,
they do that on purpose to frighten people like me. That's what I think.
Have you been on an elevator?
Did you ever ride that glass elevator at the Town Center Mall?
Oh yeah, tons. That was pretty.
That's the height of luxury, right there.
That was like a big deal when it came out because it was like something out of Tron. It had all the neon on it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool deal. Did you ever ride an elevator that had an elevator operator?
No, I never have. Have you?
Yeah, I have. I've been to apartment buildings that have an elevator operator, and I've actually ridden on some elevators that require manual driving of the elevator. Some real old buildings. So yeah, I have been on a few of those. Have you ever been on one of those elevators that's like for cargo?
Well, probably, yeah, but like whenever I play a gig at like the Clay Center or something like that, we usually take the cargo elevator down to the musician's entrance. So yeah.
What about one of those elevators that has like the rope and you go like?
No, I think that's only in movies.
Those must exist somewhere, like back in the day.
You know, fans, listeners, tell us about your elevator experiences in the chat.
Within reason.
But for right now, Aaron, why don't we talk about this week's game?
So, elevator action. Let's get into the arcade machine a little bit before you delve into the ZX version boat. Because there are a lot of similarities and a few differences, but I think it's worth noting. Because I learned a lot when I was researching this that I never knew before. So, elevator action developed and produced by Taito. Of course, Taito's done about a million things. Probably the most well-known thing they did was Space Invaders. So Taito released this. It was released in Japan in June of '83 and in North America in October of '83. In this game, you play the role of a spy named Agent 17. And the object of the game is to explore a 30-story building and go and get past enemy agents to get secret documents that are stashed behind various doors in the building. And then make your way down to the last floor, making sure you get all the documents, and get in your sports car and drive away, and then go to the next building. This thing was very popular in Japan, and they had high hopes for it when they released it in the States. In fact, I didn't realize how popular this game was when it came out. So in Japan, Game Machine Magazine listed Elevator Action in their August of '83 issue as the most successful new arcade unit of the month. It topped the charts in that magazine from September to November and was up and down the charts until April of '84. So it had in Japan. Wow. That's no easy feat, by the way.
Yeah.
They tested the game in North America, and Mike Von Kennel, the marketing manager of Taito, stated that the game was a top test piece, and he held high expectations for North American release. When they finally released it, he said the game had sold well. It also had came out in kit form, and he said the kits sold very well and set an enviable record for the company. So this was what I would consider a smash hit for Taito and Taito America.
You know, it's interesting talking about this. this does not strike me as a game that would have come out of Japan in this time period. You know, I don't know. Maybe I just have this stereotypical view of Japanese arcade games. But when I think about Japanese arcade games from the early 80s, I'm thinking about a lot of space shooters. I'm thinking about a lot of maze-like games, you know, Pac-Man type stuff like that. The games that feature human protagonists don't immediately spring to mind. Do you feel the same way, or did that not surprise you?
This game to me does seem Japanese. I'll be honest with you. But here's what's funny about it, and this is even mentioned on the wiki I was reading about this. There was fear that this game would be overshadowed by the huge release of laser games, which were coming out hot and heavy in '83. So, and if you'll recall, well, I mean, you won't recall this, but I will. Laser games were the hot new thing on the block. And so you hear elevator action. I would say it's got for the, you know, a little, maybe slightly above average graphics for '83, but not by much. Not slightly above, you know, right on par music. But so this is just basically a straight up action and gameplay game. It's not like there's a ton of frills in it. You know, and so, yeah, I can see where people might think this one might get lost in the shuffle, but it did not. In fact, Boat, this game received a Certificate of Merit as part of the 1985 ARG Awards, my favorite award.
Oh, yes. So, the gold standard in arcade awards, yes.
This thing had the people that ran Taito North America said this game had a lot of good word of mouth, and that's what made it a star. And so it was definitely going to get released on the home market. I should mention that just for fun, I looked up the Taito cabinet on eBay to see what it was going for. Back in the day, you could get these things pretty cheap. This is a pretty common cabinet. In fact, it's a lot of people's first or second cabinet. But it's one I never owned, but I had a chance to buy it a couple times. Just never got, you know, things didn't work out. But you could, if you bought this today, the cheapest I found it was $2,400 or best offer.
Whew.
Now,
wow.
Your local mileage may vary greatly, but I mean, this is a game that is popular enough to be in demand. Now, this game eventually got ported to a whole slew of systems. The Amstrad, the C64, the Game Boy got an interesting port. MSX, which I played the MSX port the other night. It's a mobile
C64.
Yeah, I said that one. The NES.
Oh, sorry about that.
The Switch, the PS4. It does in some of those back catalog, you know, game things. The SG-1000, and of course the ZX Spectrum, which is what we're going to be talking about. So the ZX Spectrum version of this came out in 1987. So it took a couple years to get this one to come out. Now this one was published by an outfit called Quicksilva and developed by Binary Design Limited, but most people have this being listed as being programmed by David Whitaker, the old standby, back again. And you could definitely tell his handiwork in the tune on this. One of the things I noticed straight away when I started loading up this game was this awesome tune. I'm going to play just a little clip here for the listeners because it's such a good tune. It's an awesome tune. In fact, I'd say that the theme that Whitaker wrote here crushes the arcade theme. It's the arcade version.
I agree.
I mean, I like the tune in the arcade, but it gets kind of repetitive.
Well, here's the issue with the tune in the arcade is that it doesn't fit the theme at all. Like the theme of the game is you're going through this place and you're shooting dudes, you're killing people, and there's people that want to kill you. The tune in the arcade game is like it doesn't fit it. You need something like Peter Gunn.
It's funny. I disagree. In fact, I think it's the exact opposite. I don't think this theme necessarily fits the game, which is the better song. I think the other theme is more spy-like than this.
Do you think so? Oh, interesting.
Beep, 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 beep. I think it's more spy-like. But I mean, listen, neither one of them are what I would call Peter Gunn. But the ZX Spectrum 128 music is top shelf. I should mention that you don't get this on the 48K, which is a bummer.
No, I started out playing the 48K version, and I quickly left it for the 128K version.
I did too. So, what has changed? Well, we mentioned, of course, this is for the 48 and 128, two different versions. If you have the choice, definitely go for the 128. I didn't see any other differences aside from that. I looked up what the Binary Design. I don't know what role David Whitaker had. I don't know if he was that company or just was a part of the company. But they had done some other stuff for the Spectrum. They did a Max Headroom game, Motorbike Madness, Bob's Full House, and Hard Drive, and to name a few games for the ZX. This game gives you some control, a goodly amount of control options, Boat. You've got Interface 2, Kempston, you can use the keyboard. And this, I had no problem playing this on the Amiga with my sticks. It worked great, and I'm assuming you probably played this on the FPGA. So what's different? What's the same in this game, Boat? When you, having played the I know you've played the arcade version of Elevator Action. What did you think of this one initially when you fired it up?
I was really impressed. Let's just to go back to the arcade version for a second. Even for a game released in 1983, I really think that those graphics are aging by that point. I've never thought that the arcade version of Elevator Action's graphics were that great. Your character, even though he's only one color in the Spectrum version, is actually a lot more defined and a lot more realistic looking than your main character in the arcade version. I'd say they all are,
frankly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And so that initially impressed me a lot. I like the fact that all of the gameplay elements are still there. You can shoot the lights out just like you can in the arcade version. You still escape in your car, and the animation. There's even the introduction is even the same as in the arcade game, where you see your guy,
it's actually
rope
better,
in.
Because in this one, the other one, it's like a rope comes down and your guy shimmies down it. And this one, a helicopter lowers him down. So it's actually, I think it's even cooler looking in this one.
Yeah. So I was very impressed initially with the whole package. There are a couple things that I don't like about this version. One is that the elevator, you have to wait a lot longer on the elevator when you're in the initial descending stage of the game where there's only one shaft. In the arcade version, it may not be realistic, but you get elevators coming up and down all the time in that. And so the action's hot and heavy because you're consistently moving around either vertically or horizontally. In this game, you're going to spend a lot of time waiting on the elevator to come for the first part of the game. And that really slows the action down a lot. The second thing is the AI in the Spectrum version is not spectacular. Yeah. The guys sort of just meander around. They don't really make any attempt to, they can't really make any attempt to get to you because they're mostly trapped on their floors. But even when they get to your floor, they don't immediately seek you out. They just kind of go about their business. So the AI could use some tweaking in this game. But the biggest problem I had with this game was it seemed like the hot spots where you go to open the door and where you go especially to go down the escalator were just really inconsistent. I had a hard time finding the exact spot where you're supposed to press down to go down the escalator or to go to open the door. Did you have a problem with that, or were you able to do it consistently?
That was not the biggest problem I had, but yes. One thing I was mentioning this earlier, in the arcade version of this game, they saw this issue coming. And so what they did was they put marks on the floor, little crosshairs. Mm-hmm. And that's where you stood. And then you hit your button or you pull down, whatever you need to do what you're going to do, and it does it, and it's easy. It works every time, right? This version has no such luxury, and so there's a lot of guesswork. Even if I've played this a bunch of times, and I still have all kinds of trouble getting in the doors and getting on the escalator. Sometimes I can do it right away, but sometimes I can't, and it's particularly brutal if the door is on one of those, up against the wall on one of those tiny ledges with an elevator shaft beside it, where you have precious little space to operate to try to get in the thing. And you can be sitting there screwing around trying to get in the door and fall into the elevator shaft if you're not careful. So yeah, I did have that exact same problem, Boat.
Now, one thing that I liked about this version of the game that wasn't present in all of the versions, and I got to be honest, I can't remember if this was like this in the arcade version or not, but you can ride on the top of the elevator in this version, and I don't think you can in the arcade version, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I was not able to easily beat the first level. I did beat it eventually, but I ran into tons and tons and tons of trouble with the escalators just because of that, and that lessened my enjoyment of the game. But taken as a whole, this game plays at a reasonable speed. It doesn't feel slow. It doesn't feel stodgy. And you're able to have good control over your guy, except for the issues that we talked about. The building itself is pretty. It's well colored. It uses the full spectrum of colors available on the Spectrum. There isn't color clash. Your guys, you and your enemies are all, monocolored sprites, but there isn't color clash. Your guys just kind of fade into the background, but there's not that blocky block of color clash. Overall, I think that this is a solid port. This is among, the best arcade conversions that I've seen. And what helps it along is that in its original form, it's a pretty simple arcade game, and that helps it a lot.
I found a lot more wrong with it. I will
Really?
say I play Elevator Action, the arcade game, a lot. Okay, it's one.
You're definitely more well-versed than I am.
I found many problems with this game. Now, there were some things I liked, but don't get me wrong, I'm not killing it, but it had problems. Let's go back to what you said earlier about the elevators. The elevators in this are a strange combination of zippy and incredibly slow. It seems like it takes them forever to get to you, and then they go past you in less than a second. They're incredibly difficult to catch. They're so fast, and so I don't know what happened there. It's a double weird problem. You find yourself often just standing there waiting for the elevator. And then if you're not quick, the elevator's gone before you get there, and you stand there some more. So I didn't like that. The bad guys are a huge problem because they operate more like they're just basically, they move back and forth and just shoot a lot. And as you go up to the next level, they go back and forth a lot, and they duck and shoot a lot. Okay, so that's increasing the difficulty, because generally you can just duck and then shoot them. The fact that the elevators are so difficult to operate, control, and the fact that these guys just randomly are shooting bullets. The arcade version, the bad guys are a lot smarter, but there's intelligence actually helps you, because they're not just, most of the time, they're not just randomly firing 20 shots across the bow for no reason. And if you're in an elevator and you happen to go up there and you can get shot easily, like flukily. Also, bad guys can just come out the door you're standing in front of and shoot you instantly without you can't even have a chance to move when you're dead. In the arcade, when you're on the elevator, you can actually, like, when I'm on an elevator and I see a guy coming, you can sort of jump straight up and then karate kick him. And then that's how you avoid getting shot on a level where a guy just stands beside an elevator with a gun. You can't do that in this. In the arcade, there's a kick button. In this, it says there's a kick. When you jump, looks like sort of like you're doing a kick. But I never killed anybody by using that. I don't know if you did. So I don't know if it actually kicks at all. It may, but I never pulled it off. And so without that karate kick, that was a vital part of the game to protect you from up close attacks. And it's basically not present in this game. In terms of the getting into the elevators, getting on off them, I mean, it was what it was. We already previously discussed that, but it was a hassle, but I could get used to it. The number one thing I didn't like was the AI. The AI was a real dud in this. That's one thing that they dropped the ball on. I like the level design. I mean, I think they pretty much took it mostly from the arcade. I like the structure of the building. I think actually the building might look a little better than it does in the arcade. To be completely honest, this game's funny. It actually, in some ways, it improves on some of the arcade parts. This game has a known bug that, and I don't know if I saw. I mean, we're watching your playthrough, so clearly you had gotten the updated ROM. But when this was originally released, every time you got to that bottom level, the screen glitched, totally glitched out. And that's what it did on mine. I didn't find out about the improved ROM until right before we started the show. But if you look around, you can get a ROM that has the bug fixed. But this apparently shipped with a big bug. It doesn't affect gameplay. Your guy still leaves, but it just makes the bottom of the screen look all jacked up. Overall, though, I mean, this is a mixed bag. I mean, they did a lot of stuff right, and the things that they did wrong were probably things they could have. I don't know what they could have done about the AI. I mean, in all honesty,
that's always sort of a black box. How much of the AI's dumbness is just due to the fact that they couldn't make a better one that would fit in the memory they had or whatever. I don't know.
I'm so used to the way I operate. I mean, you can't play this like you do in the arcade, just on the sheer fact that the way the elevator isn't as responsive as the arcade either. It's funny, you can kill guys with the elevator on this, but it doesn't. In the arcade, it sort of shows an animation of them getting mushed. And this, they turn into points. But as far as I can tell, you can't be killed by the elevator, which is different, because in the arcade you can be killed by the elevator. That's not something that comes up all the time, but it's it's a difference, you know.
Yeah. The way that I see it is that if you were a Spectrum owner and you went to the arcade when you were on vacation and you played elevator action and you had a good time with it, and you came home from the seaside and you're back in your dreary London town and or England town, and you're like, man, I want to I want to bring back the memory of me playing this game at the seaside. If you bought this game, you wouldn't be disappointed.
Well,
now, if you piled 1,000 hours into elevator action like you have, Aaron, it's easy to see where the shortcomings of this are. But if you're, say, a more casual player, you might be able to see that the game is different, but not enough to take your enjoyment out of it.
You're right. I mean, what you said is dead on. I've played this game a lot over the years, and I'm intimate with it. But I think if I was looking for a home port of this and I had a Spectrum, this would definitely foot the bill, because you do get the fun of elevator action, just with a few different limitations that you wouldn't have had to deal with in the arcade, and some overall wonkiness when it comes to the presentation. But I mean, there's, like I said, they do a lot of stuff. There are several things they do better than the arcade. I mean, for the most part, I think the graphics are kind of better in some aspects. The building looks better. The music's definitely better. So how often do you say that, where the Spectrum has improved on the arcade game? Not that often.
Right. Right.
I looked this up on the to see some reviews on this one. UVL, which is the site I got these scores off of, they have this rated as a 3.6 out of 5. Crash gave this a 72%. Sinclair gave it an 80, and your Sinclair gave it an 80. And C&VG Computer Video Games gave this a 70. So you're talking 7 out of 10. You're talking somewhere between a D and a C. But I mean, I know you don't like to do it that way. So you're talking, I would say what you've got here is an above average game. And I think that's pretty fair. I certainly don't think this is an A title. But I would say a C plus or even a B minus title, I would definitely say. And if you're particularly fond of elevator action, then it would be a real good title to pick up, because it's close. It's pretty close. I will say that.
Yeah. We did get some Discord reviews on this. Jigglebox writes, "This little game was a pleasant surprise. I'd never heard of it before, and it's quite addictive. Nice tune, although it would have been nice to have the option to switch it off. Non-stop action, but would have been nice to have a pause button. It can be infuriating sometimes when you've chosen to move and a baddie appears and releases a shot which you can't avoid. I'm not sure whether more practice would result in preempting and avoiding such quirks. All things considered, one I'll likely spend some more time enjoying. 8 out of 10. Mitsuyama writes, "I'm not familiar with the other versions of elevator action, so I can't comment on how this version compares, but I found this to be a fun game on the Specky. The graphics are nice, although Agent Otto would benefit from some rhinoplasty. I enjoyed the music, and without it, the only sound would be gunshots, but I imagine some players may find the constant music annoying. The gameplay isn't perfect. I sometimes found it difficult to see the enemy shots and when enemies came out of doors as I was walking past. Overall, I found it to be a fun game. 7.5 out of 10. And Z9K9 writes, "Movement is much more physically rigid than the arcade. On the one hand, you can't change an elevator's direction in between floors. On the other, you can pause an elevator indefinitely by standing in it off center.
Yeah.
You can't be crushed from above by the elevators in this one, but then you can't jump or crouch if one is anywhere near you. On the whole, while the game is still reasonably playable with a bit more forward planning and management of technical quirks, it's not as fun as the arcade, which thrills both with the persnickety peril of elevator hopping and the flowing dynamism of platform-based shootouts and kicks to the face. Nevertheless, the Doll's House view with all its moving parts is still cool, and I'd probably have played this a lot if I'd owned it at the time. 6 out of 10.
Wow, well said, eh? Hey,
Yeah.
Bo, just for fun, I looked at a couple other versions of this. I thought it'd be kind of neat to have a look at them. What we've got here on the left, you've got the NES version, and on the right, you've got the C64 version. I had the pleasure of playing the C64 version of this last night, and it is an absolute dud. It's crap.
Yeah.
It's double crap. How they dropped the ball in this so fully. Why, of all the times not to hork the ZX Spectrum version, this was not the time. I mean, if you look at that, that's and it plays like it looks.
It looks like garbage, and it plays like garbage. I played it as well. The NES version is
almost arcade perfect.
Yeah, it's almost arcade perfect. And they put, but of course, I like you said, this was a huge hit in Japan, so it makes sense that they took the time
Right.
to make a good version
And
of it.
I will say I have played the NES version of this, and it plays pretty well. It's got all the, I mean, it plays like it should. Of course, the NES has advantages that these other machines don't have, since it was made to play this stuff. But I thought it was an excellent version, and probably the best home port of the game. I have not played one that was better. So there you go. Oh, I did look this up just to close it out, but I looked this up on eBay, and you can get these tapes all day long for $6 to $7 in the UK. No problemo.
Cool. All right. Well, Aaron, we do have an announcement to make. We have a new goal for our Sinclair. Since we've relaunched the show a couple episodes ago, we've had a tremendous outpouring of people that have said how much they liked it, and so I've gone on Patreon and I've set us a goal, Aaron. If we can manage to get $200 a month in supporters on our Sinclair, we will make this show a weekly show. So if you would like to see us move the show from a monthly show to a weekly show, and you're not currently a Patreon supporter, head on over to patreon.com/our Sinclair. You can sponsor the show for $4 a month or $10 a month, whichever you prefer. And you can that also grants you access to our Discord community as well, where we have a monthly ZX Spectrum High Score Challenge, among other good times. Speaking of our Patreon supporters, I'd like to thank them right now. We've got Jeff Ogden, Mark Downey, Hermsky, Andrew Waite, Captain Crispy, Laurent Giroux, Eric Nelson, Paul Bossman Harrington, Chris Folds, and Pixels at Dawn. Thank you guys so much for supporting our Sinclair. Now, of course, we also tape the show live on twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. You can join in the fun. We have a pretty nice crowd here on a Saturday afternoon here in the United States. We've got our intrepid moderators with us, Duncan Styles and Pixels at Dawn Gaming, as well as Amiga Lives with us, Austin Junior Reed, Awkward Aardvark, Barkbit, Beach Bum, Bitstorm, Brock 101, Canadian Retro Things, Carbot, Cobrian, Commander Root, Cowbird Boy, Exile in Paradise, Frodo NL. We got Jigglebox, Hamo, Ice Wizards, Level Lord, Jost80, Cropton, L. Curtis Boyle, All Hail, Mitsuyama, Mr. Cola, Nick Morantes, or maybe Nick Mariota, one of those guys, Picard 2010, R-Typer, Squeaky 35, Tom Toms, Tripirds, VNK Vigoro Pros, Worlds of Rogue, and Z9K9. Thank you guys so much for taking part in the chat. We really enjoy having some folks with us while we do the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, Aaron, next, our Sinclair. I don't think that we've decided which game we're going to play yet.
Your turn,
yeah, it's my turn. I'm going to have to dig deep in the Spectrum library and find a game that speaks to me on a personal, intimate level. And I will share that with the folks. That's another perk of being on the Discord, is that you can leave us a Discord review and you get to hear about the game in advance as soon as I pick it. So stay tuned for that. And I guess that's it for this episode, Aaron. So the only thing left to say is rewind tape
and press play.